Terrific. Alrighty. Well, hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on charting the LifeCourse framework. I'm really just looking forward to spending this evening with you. As Melissa said, my name is Kane Breschi. I am a parent of a 30-year-old woman who has multiple disabilities, and I'm also the Director of Family Support with the Maryland Developmental Disability Administration. I'd like to just share the agenda for the evening, welcoming remarks. I will be providing you with a background of charting the LifeCourse, how it came to be, just a very brief background. I'm going to introduce the principles and tools to you. We'll discuss the application, and I'm going to use examples from my daughter's life and our life, if you're okay with that. And then in the end, I have some resources to share with you, and then I'd love to take questions. So with that, let's get started. So already, Melissa has told you a good bit about myself. My husband and I are the parent of 4 adult children. We have 3 sons, and our daughter Maggie is the youngest. We are fortunate to be the grandparents of 2 beautiful little boys, Lewis and George. Professionally speaking, I am a graduate of Partners in Policymaking, and I have worked in the disability community for over 23 years as a provider, a service coordinator, or as many of you may now know, or as it is now called, coordinators of community support of services. And I've done other things, and I'm now here with the Developmental Disability Administration. But mostly what I want to say to you is I am so thrilled to be here. I am a parent first, always a parent first. Sometimes I need to not be a parent first, but I am. And I just, as a parent who's gone through and has navigated transition and continues to navigate other transitions throughout life, I know that this can be cause for concern and anxiety. And for those of you who harbor great doubt, I just want to encourage you to be hopeful about this transition process, not to suggest that it's not challenging. You already know that it is challenging, but there is reason to be hopeful. And yes, it is possible for your son and daughter to transition well, and really to live the life that they want to live. So, alrighty, so with that, I'm not moving. Why is my slide not moving? Melissa, I'm not sure why that is. Okay, there we go. All right, well, let's get into it. The background. So charting the LifeCourse comes to us through the Wingspread Conference. In 2011, the Administration on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities hosted a conference in Wisconsin at the Wingspread Conference Center. And the purpose of this conference was to bring national and state leaders in the disability field together to provide direction and guidance for the shift to focus on families. One of the recommendations that came out of it was to develop and fund a national supporting the family initiative. The purpose of this initiative was to gain consensus on issues related to supporting families at both the national and state level that would ultimately inform practices and identify policies for advancing family supports across the nation and within states. This initiative would focus on working together to further define and build collaborations within and outside the disability system for supporting families across the lifespan, on an effort to ensure that community integration was always the standard of all the work that we did. This initiative became the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families. And I'm going to talk about the National COP in just a moment. But before that, I'd like to, there it is. Can not move up. There we go. Okay. I want to talk about this definition for supporting families, which was developed and came out of the conference as well. And I'm going to read it only because I think it's warranted. And so it goes, we support families. So the definition of supporting families going forward is that we support families with all of their complexity, strengths, and unique abilities, so they can best support, nurture, love, and facilitate opportunities for the achievement of self-determination, interdependence, productivity, integration, and inclusion in all facets of community life for their family members. So now let's talk, and this definition ends up impacting and informing the national community practice for supporting families. So what about the national community practice for supporting families? So it was funded in 2011, in 2012, it was funded again by the Administration on Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. They funded the University of Missouri, Kansas City, Institute for Human Development, and the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disabilities, otherwise known as NASDs. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that acronym or not, to establish a community practice in 6 states. I'm not going to get into all of that. I will just tell you that the goal of this national community practice, it was and is to build capacity through a community of practice across and within states to create policies, practices, and systems to better assist and support families that include members with intellectual and developmental disabilities across the lifespan. Maryland joined the National Community of Practice in 2016. Now, as this is happening, or meanwhile, I should say, Charting a Life course, we're going to get into this now, a set of principles and tools created by families at UMKC, University of Missouri, Kansas City, Institute for Human Development, Family to Family Program. It was developed to help individuals and families of all abilities to develop a vision for their good life, think about what they're going to need to know and do, identify how to find or develop support and resources, and finally discover what it takes to live lives of their choosing. So this set of principles that was developed for this purpose evolved during this time into the model framework that would and does inform all of the work of the National Community of Practice for Supporting Families. Charting a Life course is more than a collection of tools. It is a universal guiding framework for how to think, problem solve, and build a new future for supporting families. Like National, these principles guide the work of the Maryland Community Practice for Supporting Families, as well as the Developmental Disability Administration and that of several other agencies and organizations as we work together to better support families across the lifespan and across systems. Our ultimate goal is to support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities within the context of family and community through integrated support and services. So if you look at the screen here, that middle circle, traditionally the green area surrounding the person, you might think of or remember the term wraparound services. And on one hand, it seems like a great idea, wraparound services. In some cases, they are still very much needed, but often they end up segregating or isolating the person from their family and the community. And what we want to do is we want to move away from that. We want to provide supports and services where, when, and how they are needed based on that which is important to and for the person and family, and not in such a way that we inadvertently isolate the person. So let's move into principles and tools. Okay, the fundamental principle of charting the life course is that all people have the right to live, love, learn, work, play, and pursue their aspirations in the community. You know, and as a family, as people, if we believe this has huge ramifications for what we expect, what we might hope for our family member, right? And for a system, the ramifications are also huge because it means we need to do things differently. There are so many things, walls, you know, challenges that we run into within our community that don't in fact support all members to do these things. So as a system, we need to think about this differently, but as a family, as a person, you know, if you really embrace this will inform, and this will help you to plan and think differently about your future. We also, when we think about the all within charting a life course and this principle, what we know, we consider all people, regardless of age, ability, or family role. All people are considered in our vision, our values, policies, and practices. All families have choice, and we want for all families and to have choices and access to the supports they need. So what does this mean for you as a family? Just forget the graph here for a moment. Just think of you as a family. What does this mean? You are thinking about your son or daughter in terms of transition. I'm getting a lot of echo. Is it still there? Okay, very good. That's better. And you're thinking about them singularly. But what I want to suggest to you that what this means is that it isn't just, transition isn't just about your son or daughter. It's about you. It's about your entire family. It's about what all of you need. And with regard to you as a family member, as you support your son or daughter as they move through transition, as they live their lives, and as in many instances as the main support for your family member, what is it that you need in order to continue to support your family members so that they will thrive? So we take all family members and we consider everyone in the all. At a systems level, so in Maryland, there are estimated to be close to, just about 96,000 people with developmental disabilities, children and adults. Currently, about 25% are known to and are being served through the Developmental Disability Administration, or the DD system. That doesn't mean that folks aren't known to school systems or other systems, but DD system, that's where we fall. The remaining are unknown. And for us as a principle, when we think about all people, we no longer just consider the people that we currently serve, but we have to be aware of those that we don't serve, and how. Now, it won't ever be the case that DDA is able to serve all 95,000 folks, right? I mean, it's just not possible. But how is DDA a partner in the community through the community of practice, a partner who brings about and helps to develop or create a society in which it is easier for individuals with developmental disabilities, families who are supporting individuals with developmental disabilities to live their lives. So, for example, so it's always bigger than just the person, and it's always bigger than just one agency or organization. There are many issues and challenges we could point to, but one that is near and dear to my heart is adult size. So restrooms with adult size changing tables, they don't exist. So my daughter Maggie, you're going to learn more about her. Mags has multiple disabilities. She has cerebral palsy. She's non-ambulatory. She's nonverbal. She does not have autism. She's bright. She very much cares about her life, but requires complete care. which also, and in that requires an adult-sized changing table so that we're able to toilet her. There are no adult-sized changing tables in our communities, and there are many folks who find themselves in this situation. So what might we do as an agency that begins to bring those about? Because, you know, without a restroom, think about it, without restrooms, if the restrooms aren't available to you in the community, guess what? You're not going out into the community, right? Or you're not going to work. You're not doing the things you normally do. So it's something that clearly impacts our integration, Maggie's ability to engage her community. So again, thinking about the bigger, broader picture and how might DDA be a part of this and creating a society that really makes our community more accessible to all people with who may have developmental disabilities. All right, let's go on. This is blocking my screen here. Okay, there we go. We always consider the person within the context of family. And in doing this, we recognize that people exist and have reciprocal roles within a family system, however defined by that individual and family. Whoops. Sorry about that. It's not, there we go. Let me see if I move there. There we go. And that these roles adjust as the individual members of the family change and grow and age, right? The entire family, individually and as a whole, needs support to ensure that they are all able to successfully live their lives. So for you, something to think about. So as a system, we want to create, we want to establish policies and practices that are flexible and are able to meet the needs of individuals as they grow and age, and as their family members that are supporting them age and change. So for instance, what I was able to do for Maggie as an infant, and me being in my 30s, is very different from what I'm able to do for her as she is a 30-year-old woman, and I am now in my 60s. And so as a system, we look at we look at how we provide those services, and that they need to be flexible to meet those needs. But for you as a family, how, and now as you're approaching transition, what's changing? And there are obvious things to point to, right? But one might think about the services. Your sons and daughters are transitioning from school to adult life. And with that, there's a change in the types of services they receive or may not, right? But I would also throw out to you something else that's so important. And I know I don't even have to tell you this because it's our worst fear. One thing that begins to change are the roles and responsibilities that we have for one another. And as a parent, as the primary caregiver, you are the primary caregiver. You are providing, you are caring for and about your family member. But as he or she grows and as you age, and at some point, you have to reckon with the fact that one day you're not going to be here. So what happens when you're no longer here? And I know that's our worst fear. But how do you begin to think about that? And how do you begin to think about it? And this is a question you need to, and it requires a lot of discussion and planning around that. So family systems and cycles are important for families to consider and for systems to think about too. Now, when we in Charting the Life course, we talk about the good life, and we talk about the good life for everyone. And as I spoke about the all earlier, we consider all members within the family unit. And but when we talk about the good life, what do we mean? And for the individual, we mean that we want to support individuals. We want to support families to support the individual to achieve, again, self-determination, interdependence, productivity, integration, and inclusion in all facets of community life. And when we talk about supporting families, we're not suggesting that families in any way supersede or supplant the individual. The ultimate goal is always to support the individual to live their best life. But we do recognize that families are the backbone of the service delivery system, and in order for families to continue to support their family member, families must be supported. And so we want to support families in ways that maximize their capacity, strengths, and unique abilities to best nurture, love, and support all individual members to achieve their goals. All righty. And of course, excuse me. This all begins with a vision. When we talk in Charting Life, of course, we talk about a vision and that a good life, a vision for a good life. Well, a good life begins with a vision for that good life, right? How else do we get there? And it is no different when we think about transition. Transition requires discussion and planning, and you know this, and I know you know this. What do you want? What does your son or daughter want? What's important to them? What's important for them? What do you want? What do you need that's going to enable? What do they need, and what do you need that's going to enable this vision for their life to come about? It is important. Without a vision, and so on one hand, someone might say, well, this is obvious. And yeah, it kind of is, but guess what? It kind of isn't, right? In that, I have to tell you, so even begin with birth. When my daughter was born, at birth, it was absolutely clear her disability, although not diagnosed, was obvious at birth. And I will tell you, when my sons were born, my 3 sons were born, with their first breath, I had imagined instantaneously what they might do in their life. And the sky was the limit. And when my daughter was born, and again, part of this is, so much of it's conditioning, right? And it was clear that many things were not okay. There was nothing. I had no vision. I did not grow up in a community in which I ever saw a child with a developmental disability. And right from the get-go, I wondered, will she have friends? Will she go to school? Will she have a job? Will she marry? Will anyone truly love her, besides her dad and I? There are times, and I will tell you, even through her education, throughout her education, I can't say that anyone truly had a vision for her, or the school system itself had an expectation for her. So that she would graduate, she would perhaps even volunteer, have a job, be a valued member in the community. And without that, folks struggle, I think. So we need to support one another. We need to have a vision. It's just so important if you're going to have a good quality of life, and if you're going to have opportunities and experiences that are ultimately going to support the person in a positive direction towards and in their good life. All righty. The trajectory, which is a tool, and this trajectory of life experiences, which includes the life stages, which are below, you can see from infants and from birth through aging, is a wonderful tool in that it really can assist you, families, and actually anyone, to focus on a specific life stage with an awareness of how prior, current, and future life stages may impact or influence the person's trajectory. So for instance, if your son or daughter is 5 and your goal, your vision for them is that to be fully integrated in the community as an adult, to be working, to have friends, to practice their faith, whatever it might be, beginning at age 5, what needs to happen, for that to occur? Certainly you don't want them isolated from their peers without opportunity to develop relations, develop skills, to get an education throughout their educational career. And then all of a sudden at 21, expect that they're able to integrate. That's not working, right? So we use this trajectory of life experience and outcomes to think about, those experiences that we need when we become adults to do the things that adults need to do. Right. And so with vision comes outcomes. And historically, working with, truly historically, because we've come so far from this, but historically, when planning with people with developmental disabilities and families, the focus has been on health and safety, and health and safety is absolutely critical, no doubt. But we also know that how one spends their day, with whom they spend their day, how they enjoy their time in their community, engage their community, have opportunities for friendship, employment, and power over their lives is equally important. And so when we begin this planning, we really want to think about, these life outcomes, and as they relate to, we call them holistic life domains, which include daily life and employment. And so what I want to say before I actually move on to the others is that, again, historically, as young men and women transition from school to adult life, focus has been on health and safety, but it has also been primarily on day programming or employment. And what I want to encourage you to do is to think so much more broadly than that. Really think holistically. And I want you to think about all of these life domains, which include daily life and employment, community living. Where might your family member want to live? With whom, are on a public transportation line or not? Safety and security, absolutely. Healthy living, not just getting to the doctors, making the appointments, receiving the therapy, but opportunities to be well, to exercise, to eat well, all of those things, as well as the social and spiritual aspect of your son or daughter. We all need friends. We all need to connect, and you all know this. So I feel like I'm singing to the choir here, but I just really want to encourage you to think about those, your sons and daughters in these terms, and what are their opportunities to develop friendships and connect with peers. What are their opportunities to practice their faith, if they have one or not? What about sexuality, and how do we begin to think about that and support that in our family member as well? And then finally, thinking about advocacy and engagement. And when we talk about advocacy, in this instance, I'm not just speaking about advocating for folks' rights, disability rights at large, or necessarily, although that's important, or participating on a council or commission or so forth and so on, but their own personal advocacy, their ability to advocate for themselves, their ability to keep themselves safe, their ability just to engage their community. So all of these life domains, you really want to take into account as you move through this transition. And as you do that, you are going to want and need to know about the support, the resources, and services that are available to your family member and you, because you're going to need them. And my sense is that you're on this webinar tonight, that you probably might already have a good sense about what's there for you. So, but let me just encourage you to continue to search things out, to know what's available. Through charting the LifeCourse, we just categorize the types of supports and services accordingly. There is the discovery and navigation bucket, where in this bucket, this is where you get information pertaining to everything and anything. Maybe a diagnosis specific, it might be related to how to navigate a particular system. It might be where do we go and get training related to whatever it is that you're interested in. The second bucket, the orange, connecting and networking. These are opportunities, and how, so from a systems perspective, when we think about these three buckets, we want to, how are we providing these buckets, these types of services and supports to folks? So through the Developmental Disability Administration, how do we support the opportunities for families to connect peer to peer? We all know that there's nothing like talking to another parent or family member who is living a similar or shared experience, right? They just get it. And nothing's, oh my gosh, more powerful or wonderful when you stumble upon another family member who not only shares a similar experience, but is a bit further down the road than you and has all the tips and tricks for you and offers them to you. And boy, does it make your life easier. So how do we create those and provide those opportunities, not only for families, but for individuals to connect with one another, siblings to connect with one another, grandparents and extended families, all are part of this, right? And they too need support. And then finally, the last bucket are the goods and services. And these are, I think, what folks are most familiar with. It's the day-to-day, the tangible items you buy or use from public or private organizations in your community. So we look at school systems, we look at DDA, you look at, and again, all the other, the grocery store, anything that you can think of, all of those fall into this bucket. So as you and your family member, again, move through this transition, plan for this transition, it's so important for you to be aware of these resources. And again, my sense is that you've already begun to do it, and you're part of this organization who's helping you to do it as well. All right, which brings me, so once you've got a vision for your life, or your son or daughter has a vision for their life, and you've identified supports and service, well, with that vision comes challenges that are, associated with it that are going to need to be addressed. You've got your buckets of support and resources. How do you bring that together, right? Which brings me to the integrated support star. I love the integrated support star. I'll tell you, there's not a problem it can't solve. It doesn't mean it solves it easily, but it always gets me going and leads me in the direction I need to go. So as you might, all of us need support throughout our lives. We need support in order to live our lives. And all of us use a combination of different kinds of support. And so is true of our sons and daughters with developmental disabilities, and particularly as they transition. And given the buckets of resources and supports, there are individuals and families can access an array of supports and services. And these services fall within the integrated STAR in these categories. You've got the personal strengths and assets of the individual. We begin there. You've got resources related to the relationships that the individual may have, familial relationships with school, work, whatever it might be, neighbors, even acquaintances. We've got resources related to technology. More than ever, technology is really supporting all of us, and in particular, our folks with disabilities to live their lives. And then we've got the community resources, and community resources are resources that are available to everyone and anyone. There is no criteria to be met. They truly are community resources, and they are there to be accessed by our sons and daughters. And as we move forward, they're part of what they're part of their life and will support their life. And then finally, there are the eligibility specific support services. And these are your supports that are based upon eligibility. So when we think about DDA, you meet a criteria to receive those services. You have to be found eligible, right? Medicaid, special education, all of those are types of eligibility specific supports, which may in fact be a part of the, be a part of the array of services that you utilize. But what I love about the integrated support STAR is that it really helps, and this is what it does. It just helps you to brainstorm, to really think about. So when a challenge arises, it helps you to think about all that's available to us or you. The conversation goes deep, and the insights that come forth really just put you on the path to finding some solution. Now, again, I don't want to sound Pollyannish here, because I'm not, because there are always challenges, and I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I will tell you that I always have success when I use the integrated support STAR. All righty, and then finally, the last principle of charting the life course is it regards transformational policy and systems change. And what this really speaks to systems and what systems need to do in order to bring about change that is truly going to better support individuals with disabilities and their families. And it really charges us to ensure that individuals and families are truly involved in policy making so that they can influence planning, implementation, research, and revision of the practices that affect them. Every program, organization, system, and policymaker must think about a person, bringing people in, families in, recognizing and creating systems that recognize the person within the context of family and community. And I will also tell you this. So many of you may not be interested in, large systems change or not, but I will tell you, in my experience, my own personal experience in every family that I have known, that even the work that you do in supporting your son or daughter to live their life, a life that is meaningful to them, that speaks to them, you inadvertently change the system. We all do it. And it's just such important work. And so just want to encourage you and thank you for the work you're doing. And you may not even know that you're doing it. And so with that, I'd like to, let me just check the time here. All right, I'm going to, let's talk about application. And I'm going to walk through I'm going to use Maggie. So as I mentioned before, Megs has cerebral palsy. She's non-ambulatory and non-verbal. She's bright, she's happy, she cares about her life and wants good things for her life. So I'm going to, I need to tell you this, that Megs, while she's non-verbal, clearly communicates. I would argue that everyone communicates, whether they are verbal or not. They have a way of communication. Now, Maggie communicates using vocalizations like sounds, signs, gestures, and she also has an iPad with voice output. We utilize the touch chat application. I don't know if anyone in the audience does that or not, but it's a great one. So we have full-blown conversations with Megs all the time, and based on these conversations, here is her vision for her good life. So Megs wants to be able to make decisions about her life, wants to be connected, spend time with friends and family, have good staff, know her neighbors, hang out in her community, continue to learn, have good health, spend time outside on the farm, really important to her, taking walks, swimming. She loves to listen to books on tape. She likes money. She wants to date, does date, has date, not dating right now, but training, tell you about that a little bit later, athletes serving athletes, volunteer, have a job that she likes, that is purposeful. She wants to be able to live in a home that feels like her own, that has a back and front porch, opportunities to do new things, make new friends, have freedom, and enjoy her life. So this is a huge vision. Many elements probably aren't unlike your own, but it does include all of the life domains. What she doesn't want to be isolated. Who does? Although some of us do enjoy isolation occasionally, she doesn't want to be without a voice, without relationship, without opportunity, without purpose, without choice, without support. This always chokes me up a bit. So what I want to do next is I'm going to, my sense, and go back here, my sense is that many of you already have a sense or an idea about what your son's or daughter's vision might be. But I would also encourage further dialogue and to try to better understand and to be able to articulate it as clearly as you can, because it makes it easier moving forward. What I want to do now is we're going to move away from her grand vision to her vision for employment. So here we go. And this is, so you can see here, it's the current iteration. Well, actually, we need a new one because of COVID has just, I'll be quite honest, has just blown much of this to smithereens. But let's just go with it. So the current iteration, one is planning and growing an organic garden and selling produce at a local farmer's market. I'm going to leave that aside for now. We're not going to get into it at all. What I want to do is this goal that she has, her vision around public speaking. Now, mind you, Megs is nonverbal, okay? But yet she has this vision for employment around public speaking, and it is related to what's specific to assisting athletes serving athletes in their presentations to attract new athletes, wingmen, and raise money. Athletes serving athletes, some of you might be familiar with them, is a nonprofit organization that supports individuals with disabilities to compete in running races, 5Ks, 10Ks, triathlons, marathons, you name it, they do it. And Megs has participated in this with this organization for, gosh, I don't even know how many years now, and just loves it, and it just means a great deal to her. So therefore, this goal of hers has a lot of purpose and meaning for her. Now, what she doesn't want, again, which is isolated, without a voice, and without purpose. So that's the same. So what I want to say to you is this, and this is something you already know. When you sit down and you begin to develop this vision, it's instantaneous. The moment you begin to think about what you want, all the challenges make themselves known immediately, instantaneously. And so is true for us with regard to this vision. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, I have simplified, I pared this down a bit. I just wanted to simplify it just so that it would be easier to illustrate. So know that there's always more to the story. There's always more to the story. And I don't want any of you to be thinking like, wow, look what they've done. It was so easy. Nothing's easy. Okay, just know that. All righty. So what are the challenges? Well, communication. And so she is able to communicate, but what's the challenge around communication? Maggie, all right, so her form of communication is not universal, or the vocalizations, the gestures, you wouldn't know them. You'd only know them by knowing Mags and by us telling you what everything meant, right? So it's not universal. She's not going to get up on stage and utilize that format. It's not going to happen. Even the iPad, which is more universal in that it speaks. There's a voice output, but it really takes everything she's got to use it. And under pressure, she shuts down. It's just too much pressure. I mean, with the cerebral palsy, she has to time her breath and the movement of her arm, and she just is not able to communicate spontaneously or even meaningfully. But here, she wants to do this, and it needs to be purposeful. So how do we make it purposeful? How do we make it work? And so then the other question, the other challenge that came up, which was not as difficult, but was related to who was going to support her in doing this, and what about transportation? So, which brings me to the integrated support star, the Maggie's ASA integrated support star. So we've got integrated support stars for just about everything. Excuse me. So this one is for making presentations. So we begin with the integrated support star, we always begin, and I love this because unlike in education, the IEP, which is deficit-based, and we always start with our sons or daughters' shortcomings or what they haven't done, what they won't do, blah, blah, blah. And we all just want to run out of the room screaming. We always begin with the individual's strengths and assets. What does he or she, and so as you're planning around transition and you developing this vision, what does your son or daughter bring to the equation? What, to begin to make this possible? So in this case, for Maggie, she wants to make these presentations. So what does she bring? Well, she does communicate. She has the ability to communicate. She signs, she has vocalization, gesture, she uses the iPad. She's easygoing, which is huge, right? And she is smart, and she's trusting, and she's adventurous, and she's willing. So these are important aspects of her personality that she brings to the situation. Relationships. What relationships can we point to that might support us in supporting her? Well, clearly family, mom, dad, brothers. I mean, there's so many of us that are willing to support her in any way that we can. She's got really good staff who can support her in her ability to communicate. And then, of course, there's the executive director of Athletes Serving Athletes, who is willing, well, not just willing, just can't wait for Mags to be a part of this. So we've got folks who are willing to work with us. That's always, so if you've got people who are willing to work with you, you've got a lot there. Then there's technology. And yes, there's an iPad. We've got computers, there's Microsoft Word, and there's an email, because in the end, those essentially those things that we use. But and then the community resources that are available to her, that anyone can use, which make these presentations possible, are those that are the community venues. I mean, that's where these presentations will take place. Schools, businesses, parks, trails, so forth and so on, because that's where they run. So that's an easy. And then what are there or are there not, what eligibility specific supports are available to her as we, address this challenge. And of course, She's got medical assistance, she's got REM, and which affords her wheelchair and her equipment. And of course, she is funded through the Developmental Disability Administration, and she has community development services and staff, and there's transportation. So there's a wheelchair lift van through her funding, but also fortunately through we too have that. So in the end, what did we come up with? What was the solution? Well, I'll tell you this, there's no way Mags was going to stand on stage, and there was no way David was going to be able to say, hey, Mags, tell us what do you like most about ASA? There's no way for her to produce that on her own, not through the iPad or through signs and gestures. And we wanted Maggie to provide the answer. So in this discussion, it just occurred to us, wait a minute, because she does communicate, we can ask Mags what she likes. Now we have to remember all the aspects of the events and the things that she did to be able to ask her. But if we can do that, she can respond in her way, indicating yes or no. So we reviewed all of her experience. Well, not all of them, you get the point, many of them. And then we developed a list of some of her favorite experiences and included particular details about the event. So for instance, in the end, what we discovered, Maggie's favorite experience and favorite event was her first triathlon. And go figure, right? And it was a rainy October morning, and it was at a Hammerman's Beach. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that or not, but it was drizzly, misting, and it was cold, and there were white caps. And the first leg of a triathlon is the swim. Now, Maggie was not in the water. She was in think about a military kind of raft. And then you have the wingmen who surround who are pulling her along. They all go out. I mean, they come back. They're all freezing. And Mags is as cold as she can be. And my husband and I looked at each other and thought, oh my God, what have we done to her? And we said to her, so you can ask Maggie in such a question in such a way she can say yes or no to. Maggie, we said, you don't have to go on. She was freezing. And I said, do you want to go on? And she looked at us and she just let out this, ah, and she wanted to go on. She was a competitor. Who knew, right? So anyhow, we provide all of this information to, in a list, Word document, hence Word, right? Microsoft Word. And I provide it to David, the executive director. He reads it well in advance and becomes incredibly familiar with all that Maggie likes. And he's able to say, while Mags is on stage with him, hey, Maggie, was your favorite event the triathlon? And instantly she's able to say, ah, for yes, and very spontaneously. And now she is making a presentation. It is meaningful, it's purposeful, and it's compelling. And it's also serving the purpose that ASA has in making these presentations to encourage new young men and women to participate in athletes serving the athletes, to bring new wingmen on to support our athletes, and to raise money to continue to do all of this. So it was just fantastic. And I don't know, just going through that integrated STAR, really thinking it through and then brainstorming it, oh, this is the answer. So we did it. And then again, as for transporting her to and from, that really wasn't, the sticky issue was some of these presentations will take place on the weekend. Her community development services took place during the week. How do you, and in the end, it's not an issue. The residential supports that she received, they can support her in doing that. But actually, her dad and I are always a part of it anyhow. So we do it. So with that, here is Maggie's good life. So here she is. This is that first triathlon. That was several years ago. And then, of course, here she is. This was this past year, and there she is with her brothers. Her nephew George, the horse farm, and of course, family vacations are huge. So with that, I'm going to bring that part of this part of the presentation to an end. I want to, it is 8:03, we're looking good. What I have for you, and I've actually also provided, I just want to draw your attention to some of these handouts, these tools, these information booklets that are available to you at Charting LifeCourse Nexus. Here is the, at the bottom here is the link, but I've also I've sent Melissa this trajectory. I've sent this document on focus on transition to adulthood. This is a wonderful four-page, I mean, literally just 4 pages booklet that will assist you in thinking about, having discussions about transition, planning for transition with your son and daughter across all life domains as well. And I just really encourage you to go to the site. You can download it very easily, or if you don't have a printer, you can just review the entire document online. In addition, so there's this person-centered planning trajectory available here to you, and there are others on the site. I also have included this trajectory on the family perspective, because you really want, to the best of your ability, to support your son or daughter to articulate, to figure out what it is he or she wants. And then you have to figure out what you want. And then you really have to navigate. You really have to walk it. How do you combine? How do you meld the two? How do you respect the autonomy of your son and daughter or daughter? While at the same time, knowing your son or daughter and being very much aware of the supports he or she may need, and also very much aware of what supports you may need in order to continue to support him or her. This is an opportunity for you to think about that. And this tool over here is a great tool, and they've got other tools as well. And then here, of course, is the integrated support star. And then here I've, and again, you will receive a copy of this PowerPoint. These are just general, some basic resources related to for transitioning youth that I encourage you to take a look at if you haven't already. And then with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions. So Melissa?
That's great. Wow, a lot of terrific information. And I did, just to remind everybody, we're recording the session, and we'll be sharing that on our website and emailing all the handouts to you, and they'll also be on our website after. Give us a day or two on the recording. But if you have questions, please put them in the chat. And Magda, are there any questions from anybody in the channel with you? Come on back into the room with us and let us know what that was. And there's a comment from Carmen. This was incredibly helpful. Thank you.
Oh, great. You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Carmen. Magda, is there any questions from your parents, your folks? Yeah, I'll kick it off with a question while people are thinking. How do you get started with this, Marianne? You know, it's a great map and stuff. Do people, you know, what's the first thing that you would do? Reaching out. You've got a lot of different pieces and it seems like a lot of people that you need to engage. Or what would be the first thing?
Yeah.
Step.
Well, I mean, the first step for me would begins with your son or daughter. right? First thinking and working with them to better understand what it is that they want. I mean, it really is their life, and they really do care about their lives to greater or lesser degree. So working with them, and then really, I think you have to take time to really think about what it is that you want, and then how that impacts your son or daughter negatively or positively. And then once you've got that, you'll know who it is that you need to bring in to the circle. I would, it may be clear to you immediately that there are folks from education that you need to include, especially if you are just beginning the whole transition process. Say if your son or daughter is 14, you are just beginning to have these discussions at the IEP. It's just so important for you to be able to share. If you could fill out a trajectory, right? And at the next IEP, begin to share this information with your IEP team and begin to develop based on, again, what it is that your son or daughter wants, what you want, begin to develop some goals around that. And how do you build those into their education, their curriculum? That's one. If you're at the end of this, at the end of the process, the transition process, have you, again, depending upon what your vision is, who are those key players? If it is through DDA, how do you begin? Have you completed your application? Have you brought the CCS into the conversation? Have you identified family and friends? If there's employment that's of interest to your son or daughter, have you begun to identify those? Anyone that might influence or impact or could potentially support the vision, you really do want to bring them into the conversation. And people do it in different ways. I've worked with families. We brought a large group of family and friends together, and just to take a couple of hours and just to really brainstorm and think through it. Others I've worked with just mom and dad and the person and the child alone. So wherever you are. And I also want to say this, I get that folks may not want to ask questions now or may not even have questions, but I really want you to know, should you have questions and you want to reach out to me, please feel free to do so. And the last slide of this PowerPoint does have my contact information.
That's great. Thank you, Marianne.
Sure.
And so, you would maybe start this process as part of transition planning. So I know some of the folks on are have little younger kiddos, but it's never too early to think about that. But
actually, I would start it as early as you can.
okay.
Again, it's critical because it really does. If you don't have a vision, if you don't have an expectation for your son or daughter from the beginning of life, I mean, where are you headed? Where are you headed? And expectation breeds more expectation. And I think in the end, you end up developing and creating a better life because there are expectations for it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And then just continue to update as things change.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, Charting Life Course Nexus, they have developed booklets for each life stage. So as your son or daughter grows and changes, or as you approach transition, each booklet addresses, especially the hot topics, around that particular transition. So there really are resources there to support you and to help you to think through this. Absolutely.
That's great. And I know this doesn't apply directly to the presentation, but this is
That's okay.
the call that we get, and John put in the chat, reaching out and getting a contact at DDA. And John is saying they filed an application a month ago, which, John, I'll tell you, these days I'm hearing that's not very long. the DDA phone number never goes through, and we found an email online, but nobody responds. Any guidance there?
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that. So without knowing which region of the state he might live in, he can email me directly, and my email is, again, that last
I'll put
slide.
it in the chat. I will put that in the chat.
Yeah,
so everybody would
please
have
feel
it.
free to email me directly, and I'll see what I can do for you. Happy to do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Marianne.
Sure.
All right, and I'll put that in here for anybody. There's Marianne's email. And
also just let me know that you were part of this, you participated in this presentation, just to give me some context.
Okay, we answered that one. Let's see, somebody asking for information in Spanish. I know we have our interpreter tonight, and we may talk to you about having the PowerPoint translated, or if there's anything available that you could let us know.
Well, let me tell you, with regard to charting a life course, if you go to the Charting a Life Course Nexus, all of these materials have been translated in Spanish. So they are there and available to folks.
So we will put that on the website as well. Thank you.
I just need to say, Azib, I got to put a plug out there. We are working with Charting Life Course Nexus. Azib, who is the executive director of the Ethiopian and Eritrean special needs community, to have these translated in, pronounce it for me. Amharic. Yes. So
wonderful.
We're excited. And the National Charting Life Course Nexus is really eager to have these materials translated in as many languages as we can. So we're moving in that direction.
This is the link for the Life Course tools. We'll make sure that we share the actual, I can't find it right now, but
It's okay.
the link for the Spanish. So we'll make sure that everybody gets that. I think there were a couple more questions. Let's see here.
Sure.
Another DDA related question. Our son is 16 and we're planning to get guardianship for him at 18. Can you comment on how the interactions happen once he is in the DDA system at 21? We want to be involved as parents since he is not able to represent himself. We have heard that sometimes DDA sidelines the parents. Can you comment?
What I would say is this, and I'm speaking as a parent, it's not DDA per se. As a family member, and as you are transitioning and as your son or daughter, and as you're looking, should you choose to utilize services through a provider, what you really want to do is you really want to find a provider who is really person-centered, right? They're going to support your son or daughter the way they need to, but they are also family-centered in that they are really open and they really recognize the importance of the family and the role that family plays, and is comfortable with that relationship. We're all different, right? And we all have different personalities, and so is true of providers. And when my daughter is supported residentially by a provider, and when we were in that process of identifying a provider, that was first and foremost because we are so, we're a family, we're close, and we're part of her life, and we need to be able to be a part of her life on a very regular basis. So we needed a provider who was open to that and willing to that. So that's what I would say. It's not DDA. DDA supports family-centeredness. It may just be the personality of the provider. So you want to find a provider that is family-centered.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And Azim, thank you for putting the other link. That's a better one, and we will share that. That's a great link to
Thank
have.
you, Azim.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions for Marianne? Magda, are we, let me pop in the. Any questions? Magda? We will share, please tell them we will share the Spanish materials as well, the link for those.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question. Maybe you might not know the answer, but why is that the government every time, you know, like I'm applying now for my son who's 19. I applied for doors, and I also saw the application for the DDA, and the question they ask, he's high functioning autistic. So many of the answer will be no, he's independent, he can cook, and, you know, but he is autistic and he does depend on us. However, when they, and I heard from other parents that they see that he just doesn't need that help. And I think that, I mean, even if with he doesn't have that much limitation, but yet he still needs that help. The government will not see it like he needs that help. Do you understand my question? Like, they will say no, he's like, they will say he's fine, he doesn't need that help, he doesn't need any type of help. And I think that someone like my son, I think he just needs that little help so he can be independent, because at the end, that's what all parents want. We want our kids to be independent when they grow up, and that's what I want from my son.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are criteria that in which a person must meet in order to be eligible for services through the Developmental Disability Administration. There's documentation you do have to provide or submit, and then based on that, they are determined eligible or not. Unfortunately, there are folks who don't meet the criteria necessarily, but yet still do need some support. And it's unfortunate. What I would suggest you doing, without knowing your son, without seeing his application and reviewing his documentation, I really can't speak to where he might fall or not. You know, I would utilize that integrated support star, and what other resources are available in the community that he might be eligible for. So for instance, there are the Centers for Independent Living, otherwise known as CILS, that do offer supports and services to, well, all individuals with developmental disabilities, but higher and lower functioning, if you will. And there are, I'm drawing a blank now, but other organizations that might provide supports too. So I would encourage you, again, without knowing your son and the particulars, really, how do you sit down and really brainstorm and really review what resources are available to him, and how do you bring all of those together to support him so that he can be independent, and utilizing also your community supports, and maybe even developing some natural supports too. That's what I would do. And I'm happy to, you know, again, help you through that a little bit. I mean, help you to walk through the integrated support star and help you to identify some potential resources if need be.
Thank you.
Sure.
Marianella, I put, and for everybody, I put the link for accessible resources for independence. That's the SIL that serves Anne Arundel and Howard counties. They're excellent. They're a partner on this presentation tonight. And I do want to thank our partners, which include the school system, Howard County Public School System, Accessible Resources for Independence, the Howard County Department of Recreation and Parks, the Ark of Howard, NAMI, Maryland, and I feel like I'm forgetting one. I apologize if I am. So it is just a, a partnership to put this together.
Yeah.
One last question here we have is, can you comment a little about self-directed versus the other option, non-self-directed? Provide the resources for educating ourselves on this.
Sure. So I'm going to how do I spell? Again, I'm always a family member first, right? So so let me say this. For me, how our sons and daughters are supported always, whether you are supported through self-directed services or traditional services, always begins with the person-centered plan. The person-centered plan reflects who they are, what's important to them and for them, and identifies the services and supports they require and are receiving in order to live the life they want, right? That drives everything. And from my perspective, that's possible through self-directed services, and it's also possible through traditional services. And to, self-directed services requires more involvement on the part of the individual and or the family that's supporting the individual in terms of managing budgets, plans, services, hiring and firing staff, which is a positive thing. Whereas your traditional services, that is the responsibility for that is taken up by the provider. I can tell you that personally, as a family member, we have done both. We have done, and we are currently in traditional services. We also, Maggie was, we use the self-directed service delivery model for 5 years prior to her moving out, and loved it, just loved it. Self-direction gives you, there is more control. But given the fact that Mags wanted to move out, we wanted to support her in that. We wanted to work with her and others to create a community around her, ultimately knowing one day that my husband and I won't be here, and we really needed to establish a strong foundation for her. But we knew that to do it through self-direction would be, I felt, because I was a support broker, it would have been very challenging for me personally. Maggie requires support 24/7, and that's a lot of staffing to continue to identify and have. And so for us, we made the decision to identify a traditional provider who was incredibly person-centered. I shouldn't even say incredibly person-centered. Either you are person-centered or you're not. And family friendly, that we could really work together to best support Mags, and that and going that route, and having staff available, a pool of staff available, a pool of staff who knew her and could support her, felt like it was the better way to go for us. So there are pluses and minuses to both, I think, but ultimately in the end, you have what works, what fits, what are you able to do, I think is what you have to think about, and what meets your needs. I think both can work beautifully, and both can fall apart as well. They both can. Yeah. And then I think there was a question about how to gain more information and knowledge. If you go to the Developmental Disability Administration's website, even if you just do a search, Maryland DDA self-directed services, that should take you right to the page, and there you can learn more about it. And I can tell you that our deputy secretary, I think the more control anyone can have over their life, the better. And I know our deputy secretary very much feels the same way. And wants as many people who can to direct their services, and rightly so. But you just have to figure it out for yourself, what's best. I hope that helps.
That's great. Thank you, Marianne. It can be so overwhelming, and this is just a great tool for families, I think, to think through all these questions. I want to thank Marianne very much for being here. It's a great, as a professional and a parent, I think that's an especially important perspective. And thank all of our partners. And the one I forgot to mention before was the Howard County Department of Community Resources and Services. So didn't want to leave them out. Sorry, Erica. Our next session will be March 15th on setting up students for success. We'll have a panel talking about that topic. You're all already registered, so you will get the login, and we look forward to joining you. And as I said, we'll be sending out the link and posting the handouts and recording very soon. So thank you all very much, and have a wonderful evening. And thank you again, Marianne.
Sure, my pleasure. Thank you, and good luck, everyone.